Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about, but thank goodness for Joe Manchin. Thank goodness Joe Manchin is in the U.S. Senate. Thank goodness the good folks of West Virginia have put a guy in the U.S. Senate who cares about clothing, cares about suits. In fact, he is right now, as we speak, circulating a petition, because he's going to get something done, circulating a petition to reestablish the dress code, to bring, well, I don't even know why. This is one of those things that just, okay, this rises to the level of action. This is what they do something about. We should be losing our minds over this. The fact that this is a U.S. senator is now, this is going to be his legacy. This will be his legacy. We will make sure that this is on his tombstone. He saved the suit. And yet, they've done nothing whatsoever to help bring down childhood poverty. Nothing to help working people. Nothing to make lives better, revive the American dream, invest in the future. None of that. But the suit, that's what has to happen. And I got to be honest with you. I don't care whether you wear a suit or not. I actually think you should dress appropriately in institution of high esteem. I do have some beliefs that you should show respect. I wouldn't show up in sweatpants and a t-shirt to a Senate hearing. But is this the biggest problem a U.S. senator has? When West Virginia is one of the poorest states in the entire country. And I would have to ask, how many people in West Virginia could afford a suit? Now, this is one of these moments where my mind goes, I want average, everyday working people in the halls of power. I want a truck driver, an electrician, a carpenter. I want somebody like that to be able to go to the Senate and help make laws to make people's lives better. And I get that, suits are expensive. And if that were the argument that, I'm struggling, but I'm going to wear decent clothes, I'm going to wear my Sunday best. How many people in West Virginia don't have a suit? How many people in this country can't afford to dress in a suit every day? This is elitism. This is snobbish. This is ridiculous. Because again, if all of our problems were solved, if we didn't have one of the highest child poverty rates in our country's history, if we didn't have homeless veterans, if we didn't have people who can't afford to buy a home, if we solved all of that, then you go, hey, we did all the other work. It's time to talk about dumb stuff. But yet the guy who was the driver, one of two Democratic votes along with every Republican to make child poverty great again in this country, this is what he chooses to do. Now, again, this is what's made the right lose their mind. Oh my gosh, they're defacing the people who defecated in the halls of the Capitol. They're concerned about people wearing suits now. If you listen to right-wing blather, this was an issue. I can't believe it's an issue, but it is. And today I spent a couple of minutes doing the rounds of the dial, listening to the right-wing bloviators, our outrage merchants on the right, and it was interesting listening to them complain about how Joe Biden has increased childhood poverty. It's interesting how they're able to spin that, because not one Republican, not one conservative, not one good God-fearing, child-loving conservative voted to feed hungry children. Oh, Rick, you're being hyperbolic. Childhood poverty just went up by 60% because we gutted a program that we found that worked. If you give families an extra $250 a month in assistance to make sure that they can put food on the table, they do. It's amazing how that happens. And yet, because of our esteemed senator from West Virginia, and again, every single Republican. Now, what's interesting is I had this little back and forth today because the Tim Scott thing, just ridiculous. The fact that Tim Scott said that every worker who strikes should be fired got the attention of a small Republican Party chair or a small Republican Party county committee in Minnesota. And good on them for calling on Tim Scott to recant the comments. But I said, look, Republicans hate working people. Look at what they do. And I say this all the time. There's nothing new here. Anybody who listens to the show knows that's what I believe because it's what I've seen. Don't tell me things. Don't give me words. Show me, give me actions. And the actions have all been, hey, let's attack working people. And it's what they've done. So we had this little back and forth, and I said, look, Tim Scott is another Republican who hates working people. Republicans hate working people. And, they responded with this is a funny thing to post on a post by Republicans denouncing anti-worker crap from Tim Scott. And look, the reality is, on an individual level to an individual Republican, good on you for coming out and speaking up. But excuse me for not applauding you or praising you for being part of a party that on the national stage, when they had their little presidential debate, when all of those people who are, and wait for the next debate, they're going to all be trying to trip over themselves to attack the UAW members and the workers who are demanding better wages, hours, conditions. They are going to trip over themselves to echo what Tim Scott and Nikki Haley have been saying. But excuse me for looking at the Republican Party who has pushed policy, who has an agenda to destroy workers' rights, who keeps appointing people to positions of power on courts across this country, who are destroying the ability to fight for those better wages, hours, conditions. Excuse me for not bowing down and going, oh my God, a good Republican. There's one. And look, I applaud you personally. I got to question why you're a part of a party who hates working people. But this is what it is. The fact that individually you've come out against this doesn't forgive your party from doing all of the horrible stuff that they have done the last 40 years. I keep coming back to working class issues. They resonate with voters. Bidenomics is actually resonating with workers. When you start talking about jobs, you start talking about the economy, when you start actually doing something. Now, again, I go back to Trump. Now, remember, Trump is the standard bearer for the Republican Party, a guy who has crossed a picket line. He is a scab, crossed a picket line. That's who the Republican Party is. Now, there may be some individuals who hang around and say, no, that's not me. Well, you're guilty by association because your party hates working people. Look at the policies. Don't care about your words. And now look at the words of the leaders of the party. But here's the thing. When Donald Trump was in office, and look, I gave the racists and the misogynists and the homophobes a small pass. I know people on the left think every Trump voter is a racist, a homophobe, and a misogynist. I don't believe that. I think in 2016, there were some people who believed Trump was going to be the guy who was going to bring jobs back. He was going to be the guy who was going to save the auto industry. And remember the Lordstown lie. Let's never forget that. because there were people whose lives have been upended because they didn't take job transfers because they believed Trump. They stayed in the Lordstown area. They stayed because, hey, Trump's going to bring those jobs back. He's going to bring back the golden age of the economy. Because Trump is a good con man. He's a good used car salesman. He sold a good portion of this population on the idea that he was going to be the one to bring back the prosperous past, the jobs that were able to support a family. And you know what's interesting to me? All of those Trump supporters, all of those red hats who are attacking Sleepy Joe or, Dementia Joe or whatever they come up with, he's actually the guy who's doing all of the things that they thought Trump was going to do. And that's what I just find kind of ironic, which is why Bidenomics is working. And when you start talking about the things that they're doing, it resonates with people. And once we can get past the red hat, blue hat stuff and start talking about, green, I think you're going to have people come around. Now, like I said, the right-wing outrage machine, all they keep feeding people is, Joe Biden increased child poverty. Never a mention nary a mention that every Republican voted against continuing that child tax credit. That to me, and look, part of me says it's just them, being dishonest, being disingenuous, cherry picking their information, having to be on script because we've got to attack Joe Biden at every opportunity. But part of me goes, I don't think they care because they know what they're feeding their audience. Now, Rupert Murdoch, the head of Fox, stepped down today. I guess his son's now going to take over. We'll see how crazy Fox gets now. But the fact that he said, look, Sean Hannity's retarded, and so's half the American people. That's what he thinks of the people who watch Fox News. So when do we go, no, we're not going to do this anymore? I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Are you as upset about the whole suit thing as I am? Because it's just got me, it's got me pretty upset. Let's go with that. I can't say the real words. The truck driver in me will come out, and that is a bad thing. I don't have the money to pay the FCC fines. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back after this.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I love John Fetterman's comment yesterday. He said, if those jagoffs in the House stop trying to shut our government down and fully support Ukraine, then I will save democracy by wearing a suit on the Senate floor next week. And I would have added, pass a bill that ends childhood poverty. And maybe he'll wear a zoot suit. Who knows? I'll dress up as a clown. I'll do whatever you want. Just get things done. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, how are you? Insane.
Insane.
I got it.
So is Sarah Burris on tonight?
No.
Oh, darn.
She is in
But
Las
anyways,
Vegas.
Oh, well, I hope she wins big.
Makes two of
So
us.
I knew they were going to do this over the dress code. Remember a few days back when I called in and said that I really didn't care what they wore as long as they did their work, because I knew they were going to do this. And you know, Joe Manchin, he just jumps right in there. It's crazy.
That's the right response right there. That's the right response.
Yeah, I know. It's just, you just shake your head and go, really? What are you all supposed to be doing besides getting outraged over, you know, make-believe stuff and stuff that you just come up with because you got to make it look like you're doing something?
Yep.
But I was amused, I guess is the word I want to say, to see that Fox is being put under new management, so to speak. I'm just wondering if the son is as greedy and as inclined to twist things as his daddy is.
I'm going to go 5 times worse.
Oh, wonderful. Just what we need. So we're saying now that they're going to be right along with that ON or ONN or whatever it is. And,
I think they're gonna make crazy great again.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I guess we should sit back with our popcorn and see, you know, just how crazy they can go. Frankly, I think we ought to pass some new laws. You know, first of all, we need to, number one, Joe needs to go. We need to build some more mental health facilities. And then we need to pass a law that says if you start, you know, saying certain things, and I really don't want to hear that you can't do it because it's against somebody's rights. I really don't want to hear that. I don't care, because the Republicans wouldn't care.
Well, we used to do it. We used to do it back in the old days, Alice. If you acted up in public a little bit too much, you know, the guys with the white coats would come by and take you away. Here, we got a nice jacket for you. It's got long sleeves.
Hey, I think we need to bring it back. I'm telling you. You know, it's just crazy. We need to do these things because the insanity is multiplying daily. And I'm just going, you know, I often wonder about my own mental health, but that's a normal thing. So for y'all out there, if you wonder about your mental health and you think that you're crazy, you're not.
There you go.
Because well, that's true. It's very true, because if you really do have a mental health problem, you know, and I'm talking along the lines of being psychosis or borderline personality or what have not, then if you think that you don't have one, you don't. But anyways, you have a good evening.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. No, I mean, you know, at the end of it, you know, I talk to myself quite often. Some of the best conversations I ever have. Alice cracks me up. This made me laugh today. Very few things about Trump makes me laugh, but this, and I've got to get the Cassidy Hutchinson book. I've got to try and find out. I don't want to buy it, but I got to find out who the publisher is and see if we can get them to send us a review copy. Maybe get her on the show. Evidently, according to the Guardian, do you remember when Trump was refusing to wear a mask and would go to events without a mask on? Well, it turns out, according to Cassidy Hutchinson, and she's the reason for it, that the reason he didn't wear a mask anymore after this visit to a factory, he I guess he put on a white mask and then asked one of the staffers what they thought. And what Cassidy Hutchinson writes is, I slowly shook my head. The president pulled the mask off and asked why I thought he should not wear it. I pointed at the straps of the N95 I was holding. He was looking at the straps of his mask. He saw they were covered in bronzer. I'm going to let the laughter go. Evidently, Trump said, why did no one else tell me that? I'm not wearing this thing. Evidently, he didn't want to wear a mask because his makeup would smudge. His makeup would smudge. Oh, boy. Yeah, okay. There you go. The Lincoln Project, former Republicans turned somewhat sane. They have a new ad out that's portraying President Biden and his age as an asset, saying, look, his age and his experience are an asset. And I agree. His experience, very much an asset. Age, still kind of a problem. But guess what? Age, a problem on the other side, too. Do I wish Joe Biden were 20 years younger? Yes. Do I wish he could give better speeches? By every measure, yes. But here's the thing. The policies that they're moving, I'm thrilled with. Told someone today, just what he's done with the National Labor Relations Board makes me happy. That's the reason to vote for him. The fact that we're going to potentially make organizing and reunite this country by reunionizing, to me, is a great idea. Good thing. The reason that I am all behind him. Now, the problem is we've got a Republican Party hell-bent on destruction, again, holding the country hostage. And I think right now, we're ticking down less than 10 days towards another shutdown that there doesn't appear to be any end in sight, because you have people who really want to burn the house down. And I've said a million times before, these are people who they want to push the button. They want to flip the switch. These are people who would, without question, they do that experiment where you push a button and you don't know, you could be electrocuting someone or you could be feeding someone, you don't know, but these are the people who would just be pushing the button like crazy in the hopes that they were electrocuting people, because I think that's where their mind goes. But here's the thing. Quote of the day. And again, remember, go back to when Kevin McCarthy was going through all of the fight to become speaker and the 15 or 20 whatever votes it took to make him speaker. I said I want this for him. I truly want him to be speaker. I truly want him to have this honor of waking up every morning thinking about all the crazy people in the Kook caucus. I want him during the daytime to have to deal with all of their shenanigans and nonsense, and people leaving draft proposals to throw him out of office in the bathroom. And then at night when he goes to bed, I want him to think about the last thing he thinks about is Scott Perry and his Kook caucus doing more things to damage the country. I want him to have the acid reflux. I want him to have the burning throat. I want him to not sleep, because I want this for him. I want him to be speaker having all of these problems. Now you've got McCarthy, who told reporters about the House voting down a defense bill. He said, this is a whole new concept of individuals that just want to burn the whole place down. That doesn't work. Yeah. And you know who knew that before you got the job? The rest of us. So here's an opportunity for him to possibly, reach out to Democrats. Will he do it? I doubt it. But I was thinking about it today. This is about where John Boehner would be crying. Here's the thing. They couldn't even vote to adjourn. They couldn't even vote to allow themselves to go home. That's how dysfunctional our House is right now. That's how dysfunctional the Kevin McCarthy era has been. And is it his fault? No. Because the GOP, they've lost their minds. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day nearly 500,000 textile workers from Maine to Alabama walked off the job in a general strike. The United Textile Workers had launched an organizing campaign the year before. Within months, their membership had grown from 15,000 to well over 250,000. Working conditions and pay were abysmal. Normal work weeks averaged 55 hours. Child labor was widespread, and workers were always in fear of mill closings, pay cuts, and firings for suspected union activity. In the South, the industry had essentially been in a depression since the early 20s. The key issue was the stretch out. Workers were routinely expected to complete an increasing amount of work at the same rate and wage. For a brief moment, workers hoped their conditions would change when President Roosevelt signed the Code of Fair Competition the previous summer. It raised wages, limited hours, and prohibited child labor. It also allowed for union organizing. But the mill owners maneuvered around the code effectively, and the Textile Relations Board refused most workers' complaints. Fed up, workers walked out of the mill by the hundreds of thousands. They used the flying squadron tactic employed by Minneapolis Teamsters earlier that year, traveling from town to town, from mill to mill, calling workers out on strike. Mill owners were shocked. Within days, strikers confronted thousands of police and scabs. More than 40,000 National Guardsmen were called out in 16 states. Over the course of the strike, 16 people would be killed and hundreds more injured. After 22 days, union leaders called off the strike when President Roosevelt promised a government survey of industry conditions. It was an outrage, a betrayal, and a defeat felt for decades. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Oh, thank God for Ted Cruz. Once again, the far right-wing U.S. Senator is saving you and me from a political horror that doesn't exist. This is Ted's specialty, for he seems unable to deal with the real economic and social problems that workaday people actually have. Thus, he constantly tries to divert attention from his senatorial incompetence by staging embarrassing political stunts, such as his furious fulminations against Big Bird, Mickey Mouse, and other fictional characters. Unable to triumph over them, however, Cruz is now conjuring up entirely fictional conflicts to let him, a Harvard-educated elitist, pose as a hero of working-class commoners. Beer drinkers, for example. The cruiser recently swooped onto a Republican TV show, squawking like Chicken Little that Joe Biden intended to restrict us Americans to only 2 beers a week. Oh, the horror! What is it with liberals that want to control every damn aspect of your life, squealed the senator, who, by the way, does want government to control every woman's reproductive rights, people's voting rights, the rights of labor, what books people can read, etc., etc. But Ted's in a tizzy over Biden's 2-beer limit. Only, there's no such thing. Actually, Biden has said nothing about beer. Zero, zilch. Joe's kind of busy. You know, Ukraine, global warming, healthcare, real problems. So, unlike the little senator from Texas, he doesn't have time to play political pickleball. This is Jim Hightower saying, embarrassingly, such other GOP officials as Iowa Senator Joni Ernst have joined Cruz's screwball crusade to stop Biden's non-existent beer bust. It's like they all went to clown school to learn to be senatorial. As for Ted, his nonstop series of nutty PR antics reveals that he is to a real senator what near beer is to beer, only not nearly as close.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, interesting story over at The Economist. Yes, I sometimes read The Economist. I don't subscribe. I think it was Sarah Palin who, when she was asked, what magazines does she read? She threw out The Economist. Most people don't read The Economist unless they're in the dentist's office. But I happened to catch this article on climate change, and look, they're coming at it from an economic standpoint, which is, and we've been talking about this for a while. Look at Florida, for instance. Insurers are leaving the state. It's a boom state where thousands of people are going. You would think more customers, higher density, more profits, especially considering that Florida's homeowners policies are probably, I think, are right up there with the highest in the country. They're, what did I see the number? Like $6,000 a year is the number. The average home insurance premium, $6,000, 3 times the national average, up 42% year over year. Yeah. And you would think, hey, what profit, $6,000, that's a huge amount of money. You would think insurers would be flocking to get people to pay, $6,000 a year. Problem is, they're not. In fact, you look at Florida, as we've talked about before, there are, I think at least 15 that have left the state or limiting their access in the state. You've got 7 others that are insolvent. You've got all these people going, maybe not. Maybe we're not. Now, I love this guy on. He does one of the. It's one of the video, Instagram, TikTok, one of them. Reels, YouTube, whatever. It's one of the short videos. There's this angry dude, and I don't know what his name is, but he yells a lot. He's an old guy, wears glasses, always in a suit, and he yells a lot and profanity out the wazoo. And he said, and I'll never forget this because I wish I could find the clip. He said that global warming's a hoax because people are still building in Florida and insurance companies are insuring them and banks are underwriting the loans. If this were real, then no one would underwrite this stuff. And I got to find that. So if someone knows where that is, please send it to me, because this is one of those moments where you go, right now, it's beginning to happen. We're at the beginning of the insurance companies who are in business not to protect you, not to make sure that you're well, not to make sure that you're made whole in your moment of crisis. They're in business to make money. Pure and simple. They're not in the business of rebuilding the country. And I was amazed at this Economist article that pointed out in Santa Clarita, 85% of the properties in one of the Santa Clarita zip codes were dropped by their insurers between 2015 and 2021. 85%. Now, the thing is this is one of those moments where you go, what do people do then if they can't get insurance? Well, they sorry, you're on your own. Now, understand, this is an area that was, devastated by fires, and, insurers lost their, what. But, it's always one of these things, well, either act of God or we just ran out of money. And then who picks it up? The taxpayers. We get stuck holding the bag. And I'm looking at this story, and again, today I had that conversation with someone who bought into the, it's all a hoax, it's all not real, no bad things are happening. You're just looking at the wrong stuff. And I'm going, I don't know. Wildfires seem to be more, hurricanes seem to be more, weather seems to be much more extreme. Something's happening. Whether you believe it's man-made global warming, whether it's just a cycle of things getting worse. Don't care. What's happening is these insurers are going, you know what, we're not gonna keep losing money. Now they point out that in Texas, you go along with Texas, which has been one of the fastest growing states in the country. They're vulnerable to huge storms that form in the Gulf of Mexico. You've got Florida, who grew at a big rate. In fact, grew twice as fast as the country did between 2000 and 2020. They point out that by 2015, the value of insured properties in the Gulf and Atlantic coasts, $13 trillion. Who can insure that? Reality is none of these companies. And we're moving to riskier places. And by moving to riskier places, more bad things are happening to people. You go to an area where you're going to have wildfires, don't be surprised if it happens. You're going to move to an area where there are hurricanes, don't be surprised when there are hurricanes. And you've got these insurers who are going, you know what, we're not going to write as many policies in these vulnerable areas because we don't want to be on the hook for it. Insurance companies sell you an insurance policy hoping you'll never use them. We've had a homeowner's insurance. I've owned a house, got to be 30, I'd say 30 years. We filed one claim in 30 years. I know people who have never filed a claim in 30 years. Those are the people that insurance companies want. not someone who lives in an area where, oh, you know what, hurricane, knocked the roof, took the roof off. I need a new roof. Wildfire came by and burned down the barn and half the house. They don't want that. And the question then becomes, in these places where all of these people live and have built their homes and their lives, if insurance companies aren't going to do it because it's not profitable. And interestingly enough, these are in very Republican areas most of the time, who hate government, by the way. Who's going to be the backstop? And look, it's all the coastal states who are in this. That becomes the question. How much are we willing to be on the hook and still not do anything? I mean, this is my frustration, because this person I was talking to today, believes we shouldn't be doing anything. Thinks electric vehicles are terrible, electric heat pumps are terrible, solar panels are ridiculous. Just went down this whole list of, red hat club member card kind of stuff. And I don't know how in this day and age, hearing stories like this, and we've been talking about this for a while, where the moneyed interests are saying, yeah, things are happening. I don't know when it shakes us awake to where we do something. I'm not quite certain there. But I look at this and even if you don't believe in climate change, what Joe Biden is doing, I think, is important, because it's moving us in a direction that the next generation of jobs, the next generation of investments, the next generation of moving us to, renewable. I was asking this question today, because this person told me, well, they're all bought and paid for, all the politicians. I'm going, well, maybe so. But who are they bought and paid for by? Are they bought and paid for by people who want to help, or ones who just want to help themselves? The oil companies have had, the best of times, best of luck, best of fortunes for the last, 50, 100 years. The reason we haven't moved towards, renewable energy is because of the oil companies who want to make sure we're still hooked on the juice. And, I said, look, had we followed Carter's plan, of which I think today is his 99th birthday, if I'm not mistaken. And happy birthday, Mr. President. Had we followed his vision back in 79 and put solar panels on homes and move towards some renewable energy sooner, we'd be much further down the road. And, I said, look, we start off by mandating all new construction have some bit of energy independence. You start off maybe with geothermal, you start off with electric heat pumps, you start off with solar panels on the roof, whatever. But mandate that every home built, every building built has some measure of renewable energy towards it. Every roof should have solar panels. That's simple. And you can do that by saying every new construction building, that's what they got to have. And then you start moving towards, hey, we're going to incentivize people to put it on their own homes. I know with our bill, we produce about 40% of our electricity. We have a reasonable system on our roof. It's about 12, 13 years old now. I think everyone should have something like that, because it'll help get us off of the dirty stuff. It's going to help get us away from pulling stuff out of the ground, help make us a little bit more independent, but it's going to slow the growth of our use of oil. It's going to slow the growth. I'm going to make the prediction we're never getting off of oil. It's never going to happen. And I know my environmental friends are going to lose their mind. Yes, we can do it. No, you're not. But maybe slowing it, maybe, even just a small cutback is helpful. And we do that by smart policy. And I know that's all real wonky science stuff that they get into. Here's where my thought is. This is the next generation of jobs. This is the next American industry. This could have been the American industry Again, Reagan comes in, fires the Patco workers, shot heard across the boardroom, go get those working people. But he also ripped the solar panels off the White House and told Big Oil, hey, the next 40, 50 years, that's your present. You're welcome. And look what we've been stuck with. And yeah, I know, I get the talking point. Well, we're going to trade Middle East oil for Chinese batteries. We don't have to. We can build those here. And that's what the president's talking about. That's part of the jobs part of this, which is why it's a winning message. Bidenomics is a winning message. When you start talking about addressing the climate and creating jobs so that communities that have been left behind for the last several decades have a shot to get ahead, have a shot to grab their identities back, those are winners. And look, I think Biden's got a really good message going into 2024. The fact that our economy created more jobs quickly and did it more efficiently and quicker than virtually every industrialized country in the world. The fact that our inflation wasn't as bad as the rest of the world. I know it's bad, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been if we had somebody, I don't know, like Donald Hoover Trump. The fact that you've got a president who's talking about, how do we make sure that families can get by? You got somebody who wants to not just talk about investment in infrastructure, but actually doing it, actually talking and doing help for small businesses. Biden may not be great on Twitter, but he's better than Trump was on the economy. And like it or not, the economy is moving in the right direction. And in 5-10 years, we're going to look back and we're going to be grateful for this moment. Even in the face of all the right-wing outrage merchants who want to keep us angry over suits. I still can't believe that. But Joe Manchin's going to save the country, going to save the world for democracy by wearing a suit. Never mind those kids or infrastructure investments. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. A quick break right back after this. Stick around.
Phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1991. That was the day that members of the Culinary Workers Union Local 226 went out on strike against the Frontier Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. What they did not know was that the strike would last for more than 6 years, becoming one of the longest work actions in U.S. labor history. The Frontier was the second casino to open on the Vegas Strip in 1942. At the time of the strike, the Alardi family owned the historic casino. The Alardis were vehemently anti-union. They renovated the old facility and then reopened, refusing to sign a contract to pay its workers the same rate provided at most other Vegas casinos. Claiming that the Frontier was too small to match the wages of the larger outfits, management refused to budge from their position. In response, Local 226 members mobilized. The year before, Hattie Canty had been elected president of the local. She was a black mother of 10 children and a widow. She had worked as a hotel maid. Her leadership brought a new determination to the Culinary Workers Union. Local 226 set up 24-hour picket lines outside the Frontier. The strike was joined by Bartenders Local 165, Teamsters Local 995, the Operating Engineers Local 501, and the Carpenters Local 1780. The strike became an important moment in Vegas labor history, as other casino owners looked on watching the labor battle unfold. The unions stood strong. The picketers' demand that the owners should, quote, sell, shut down, or sign became the call. In the end, the Alardis decided to sell. The new ownership signed a union contract and rehired 280 striking workers. Triumphant union members cut a red ribbon at the hotel to mark their victory.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So the mainstream corporate-controlled media still wants to keep feeding us the inflation's bad angle, the economy's bad angle. And when I saw David Brooks trending on Twitter today, I had to know why. The New York Times columnist evidently went to Newark Airport and had lunch. Evidently went to the Newark Airport Smash Burger. I've never been there, so I don't know. But he tweeted out a picture of his meal, which was, a decent hamburger, some fries, and some green stuff, stuff that I guess you might put on a hamburger. I don't, but some people do. And it looks like he had something of a drink. And he said, this meal just cost me $78 at Newark Airport. This is why Americans think the economy is terrible. Now, on its face, you look at this, you go, oh my God, $78 for a hamburger and a drink. Oh, that's terrible. That's horrible. Now, look, I've been in airports. Airport food's expensive because they know they got you. You're captive. It's not like you're going back through security, catching a cab and getting out of the facility and then going back through security. They know you're not going to do that. So, yeah, they're going to jack up the price a little bit. That's going to happen. But $78? Holy wow! What could be in this hamburger? And I know it's the Wagyu beef, and that's a good thing. But as people decided to look into it, someone posted a picture of the menu, and the hamburger itself with the French fries and all of the lettuce, tomato, and onions and pickles and all that. $10.40. That's what the meal cost. $7.65 if you just bought the hamburger. Turns out 80% of Brooks' bill was his bar tab. 80% of the bill was his bar tab. So my mind went, maybe New York Times maybe need to, I don't know, pull back on David Brooks a bit, maybe a little rehab. Or maybe get him another drink and tell him not to. Let's go to the phones. We got Steve on line 1 from Chicago. Steve, how are you?
Yes, thank you for taking my call. And I think that this is demonstrative of, where we are in terms of media these days because, there's this rush to get things out there, to get them in print, to get them on the air. And that's why they say that, that journalism is history's first take on everything. The problem is that in our rush to get everything out there, we sometimes forget to do things like fact-checking or, putting things into context.
Or sobering up.
I travel a lot. And, yeah, exactly. I do a lot of traveling. So, yeah, you're exactly right. Ever since 9/11, they know that, there's an inside and an outside the airport. Inside the airport is like its own little prison. And you're not going to go back through security, as you point out, to go out and get a bite somewhere. And that means that the people who actually have the licenses to serve food in airports, it's a license to steal in many ways. You're stuck, and let's face it, if your flight is delayed and it's going off in 3 hours, you're not leaving the airport. You're going to sit there, you're going to find something to eat at the airport. And then you might also have something to drink, and a lot of people do in order to pass the time. And then they wonder why their bill is so high. But this idea that, that all of a sudden this is something new, again, context matters. What did he have to drink? I can have, 3 drinks for $30, or I can have one great shot of scotch for $40. So
it was 12-year-old scotch. Is what they didn't name what it was, but it was 12-year-old scotch.
Yeah, which isn't great scotch, by the way, but okay. But at the airport, they're going to jack up that price significantly, and quite frankly, any bar they're going to do that. So yeah, these are real first world problems. That's the other point I wanted to make, because it's amazing that this is where we are. That these are people who can afford to travel, do travel, And this is their gripe in life. Oh my God, I was stuck at an airport and I drank and ate more than I thought I should have, or didn't look at the prices, and this was my bill. Well, geez, I mean, let me cry you a river. Perhaps you could ask somebody in the Ukraine if they'd be willing to send you some money, because there's nobody else suffering in the world. I mean, come on. I mean, a little bit of context here.
Yeah, but no, but it's the outrage candy, Steve. You've got to keep feeding people the outrage candy so that they can be upset about things, and just not the right things. Like I started off with today.
Right.
Joe Manchin's out there. He's fighting to save the suit, Steve. He's fighting to save the suit. Screw those kids that are going hungry. But at least the people who took the food from them, they'll be wearing suits.
Yeah, I mean, and somehow all of this will spun into some sort of fault of labor, or people who are, somebody who dropped out of high school and they're working in that kitchen back there and demanding $40 an hour. So that's why your bar tab at the airport and restaurant tab was so high. I mean, that's invariably what happens with this stuff. Yeah, we had to pay those people a lot of money, so that's really where your money went. Not that somebody's price gouging you at the airport, because they got. I'm here in Chicago, and we have had decades of scandal with regard to how a lot of restaurants got those gigs. There's only so much said our two major airports, and we've had investigation after investigation as to how exactly did they get these gigs where you've got millions of people who are trapped in this location with no alternative. So, yeah, it's a recipe for corruption to no end.
I'm with you. Appreciate it, Steve. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
No, I mean, yeah, it is. It's a license to. You would argue to print money. Steal. He's right. I want to end this hour on good on the UAW. And we're going to talk about the strike here in the next hour. But good on the UAW. Sean Fain filed charges with the National Labor Relations Board against Tim Scott for his comments. Because look, you can't do what he did. Telling workers that they'll all be fired for striking is a violation of federal labor law, and it's not something becoming of a senator, according to Fain. And look, if you listen to Tim Scott's spiel, invoking Ronald Reagan, Reagan fired those Patco workers. Tim Scott's going, no, we can fire anybody. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. Do I think anything's going to come of it? I don't. But the idea that someone is finally standing up and fighting back gives me great hope. But again, the complaint accuses Scott of violating the section of the NLRA that lays out employees' rights to participate in labor actions. Within the past 6 months, they write, the employer has interfered with, restrained, or coerced employees in the exercise of the rights guaranteed in Section 7 of the Act. On Monday, September 18th, 2023, Tim Scott threatened employees with adverse consequences if they engaged in protected, concerted activity by publicly responding to a question about striking workers as follows: you strike, you're fired. With Jennifer Abruzzo at the NLRB, I gotta wonder where this goes, and could this be precedent setting? Because look, when the Republican debate happens, when it comes up here in a couple of days, at the Reagan Library, you don't think they're going to be all tripping over each other to regurgitate that theme? We should fire all those workers who have the audacity to want better. Oh. And then the guy who's going to probably be the nominee is a scab across the picket line. Go figure. We'll take a quick break. Right back.
We must phase out coal, oil and gas in a fair and equitable way and massively boost renewables.
World nations grapple with climate change at UN General Assembly.
We will use our energy dominance to deny our enemies revenue.
DeSantis vows to unleash fossil fuels while downplaying climate change.
This is not about the politics. This is about doing what's right for the country in the long term.
Conservative UK Prime Minister weakens Britain's climate policies. Plus, President Biden launches the first ever American Climate Corps.
All of those launches and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
The future is not fixed.
Right. It's broken. We're kind of hoping you guys might help fix it. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, summer is wrapping up here in the U.S. A long, cruel summer. It's just getting started in Australia, but I understand things are not looking good down under already.
No, unfortunately, Australia is dealing with a scorcher. A spring heat wave is shattering records with temperatures 20 to 25 degrees hotter than average and putting dozens of runners in the Sydney Marathon in the hospital for heat exhaustion this week. In politics, in a Texas oil field on Wednesday, Republican 2024 presidential candidate and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis downplayed climate change in unveiling his energy agenda, vowing to withdraw the United States from global climate pacts, end the U.S. commitment to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions, expand extraction of fossil fuels on the public's lands, and slash federal regulations on pollution and conservation to boost domestic fossil fuel production.
He did that in the middle of an oil field.
Yep. DeSantis also said that as president, he'd bring gas prices down to $2 a gallon, a difficult prospect given that oil prices are set on the global market. In international diplomacy, at the United Nations General Assembly underway in New York, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that current government actions to cut dangerous climate warming emissions are, quote, falling abysmally short, even as the world just had a rash of deadly extreme weather disasters and its hottest summer on record. Guterres called on nations to enact key steps like ending billions in annual subsidies for fossil fuels, implementing a price on carbon, and assisting developing countries with adaptation and mitigation projects. Guterres targeted wealthy, high-emitting countries and their obligations to address the crisis they created.
G20 countries are responsible for 80% of greenhouse emissions. They must lead. They must break their addiction to fossil fuels. To stand a fighting chance of limiting global temperature rise, we must phase out coal, oil, and gas in a fair and equitable way and massively boost renewables.
Yeah, but here was my favorite comment from Guterres.
Humanity has opened the gates of hell.
I think he's got it about right.
President Biden addressed the UN on Tuesday, focusing on deadly extreme weather disasters around the world, and highlighted the surge in historic U.S. climate actions under his administration, from new funding to assist developing countries to adapt to climate impacts and transition to new energy, and new policies under the Democrats' landmark climate law, the Inflation Reduction Act.
Last year, I signed into law in the United States the largest investment ever anywhere in the history of the world to combat the climate crisis and help move the global economy toward a clean energy future. But we need more investment from public and private sector alike, especially in places that have contributed so little to global emissions, but face some of the worst effects of climate change.
In the UK, Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who was not at the UN summit, this week backtracked on the UK's successful climate policies. He rolled back a 2030 ban on gas and diesel cars to 2035 and rolled back upgrading energy efficiency projects and transitioning to electric heat pumps. UK climate scientists said the rollback puts the country's legally binding 2050 net zero target in jeopardy, and energy experts said it will prolong the UK's dependence on fossil fuels and damage its growing clean energy industries.
What the hell is he thinking?
That's an excellent question.
Thank you.
And finally, good news for America. President Biden used his executive authority to create the first ever American Climate Corps, a paid green jobs training and service program for young adults modeled after the Depression-era Civilian Conservation Corps. A key goal of youth climate campaigners, the Climate Corps will employ more than 20,000 young adults to build projects in clean energy, conservation, and climate resilience, like restoring coastal wetlands wetlands, wildfire prevention, and building out solar and wind projects.
Very, very cool.
Yes.
For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on Saturday, we're going to be heading out to Toledo to march with the striking Jeep workers. And then on Sunday, we're planning on heading up to Michigan. Going to meet our friends who are the Ford workers and maybe talk to folks, take some pictures, do some interviews. I think it's going to be a good weekend. And as I've been saying for the last couple of years, this is the time when we adopt a striker. I've been saying, let's start that program. Let's get people out to these picket lines, because the bigger the picket lines, the shorter the strike. The more community involvement, the more people who are showing up and speaking out, again, the shorter the strike. The more people who are looking at these executives and the money that they're putting into their pockets and saying, that's wrong, the shorter this could be. And here to share some thoughts on what's happening and how we can help, I've asked Tiffany Simmons to come talk with us. Tiffany is a UAW 900 member. She's also the chairperson of the women's committee there. Tiffany, thanks for taking time for us.
How are you?
I am good. So let's start with the basics. What's going on? Why are we here? Why are you on the picket line? Why are your coworkers walking on the picket line today?
We are on the picket line because it has been a long time coming. We have been politely asking for the things that we are asking for now, which are, for those that don't know what they're called concessions. We are trying to get the concessions back. We are not being paid fairly. We are not being treated fairly. The world has evolved. Every part of this world has evolved, the economy, and it has not evolved for us yet. So we've acted nicely, we've acted not so nicely. Now we're at a point where we're demanding.
Yeah. No, and that's that. Look, at the end of the day, as I've said, the strike is the last arrow in the quiver, and it seems like you guys have hit that point in the road where hopefully this begins to shock the system and people get a little more serious. Let's talk about you personally. How long have you been a UAW member? How long have you been at Ford?
I have been at Ford. It's a little tricky because I started at Ford in 2007 as a part-timer, what's called a temporary full-time employee. And I was a part-timer from 2007 until they hired me full-time in 2012. So I've been at the plant that I'm at now since 2012. And that's actually my 5th assembly plant.
Your 5th? Where did you start out before this?
I started off at Flat Rock, our Mustang plant. I went from Flat Rock to Dearborn Truck. I went from Dearborn Truck to Romeo Engine. And I was actually in orientation to be a part-timer at our Woodhaven stamping plant when I got the phone call to come to Michigan Assembly here for full-time work.
So you basically bounced around the state of Michigan to keep a job.
I was an auto gypsy for a very long time.
And over that period of time, have you seen things get better? You seen things get worse? What's been your experience?
It's almost like a tug of war. At one instance, things get better, but then it gets pulled back in the direction of it's not as good as it could be. I don't think it's ever been as good as it could be. Ford is my family business, or the auto industry is my family business. So I've been a Ford girl since I was 2. Ford has paid for college, for braces, the whole 9. So that's been something for me.
Well, someone's hard labor for Ford paid for that.
Yes. My father is actually still a Ford Motor Company employee. We are we are pushing him toward retirement now. He's a little stubborn.
Now, unfortunately, he's got a retirement, no?
Yeah.
How many people now at Ford don't have one?
That's the majority right now, the people that don't have one. Whereas he has a pension, I do not. My younger brothers that just recently got hired, I have 3 younger brothers that are now Ford Motor Company employees. They do not. So my dad was kind of last of a dying breed.
Yeah, because last night we talked with a guy from Jeep, and he said, look, when he started in this gig 35 odd years ago, this was the gold standard of employment in this country. It was the top of the working class. It was the job that people spent their lives trying to get, and then when they got it, they stayed. Now it seems like, it's almost like a McJob from what I understand.
Yes. So this job, growing up, this job used to be something that I witnessed. One paycheck could feed an entire family. One paycheck could take care of an entire family. The benefits were good. This was the creme de la creme. We're the Motor City. So this was what it was about. Over the years, by the time I entered the industry, it declined at a very quick rate.
Now that had a lot to do with the companies getting themselves into trouble by not giving customers what they needed, things that the UAW back in the 60s said that they needed to be doing, but they chose not to. So when they got into trouble, they came to the employees and said, look, we want stuff back. We want massive concessions. And look, they won massive concessions. They are profitable. They are massively profitable because of their employees.
Yes, and the thing is, those concessions, they were never meant to be, from my understanding, they were never meant to be permanent. When we were saviors of the auto industry when they came to us for those concessions. Oh, the UAW, they had so much gratitude for us when we helped them out, when we rescued them. They were forever grateful until we asked for the things that we wanted back. It's like letting someone borrow money. They tell you, okay, well, when I get back on my feet, I'll pay you back. They get back on their feet, they buy a yacht, they buy a Porsche, they get a mansion, they live in a gated community. And then when you look and you say, hey, can I have that couple of $100 back? Not only do they tell you you can't have your money, but then they call you ungrateful.
And greedy.
And keep your money. And greedy. And keep your money that you loaned them because you saw that they needed it. So that's kind of how we feel right now. We just want our loan back.
Is that the sentiment on the picket line? Is that what your coworkers are thinking? Because I know there are a lot of people who are angry. I know that the frustration has built over the years on a lot of levels for a lot of different reasons. So all this just seems to be coming to a head right now. But is that the common theme?
Yes, the whole theme of give me my stuff back. That's it. Like, I'm not asking you I might ask you for a couple of extra dollars interest, but it's because you've had my stuff. You're holding my stuff hostage.
So when the mainstream media loses their mind over the 40% number, when Nikki Haley says, oh, well, they're offering 20, that should be good enough. This is why we don't let unions in South Carolina. What do you think?
It's so easy for people to sit on the sideline and say what we deserve and what we should have. People that do not come in that plant with us, people that do not work on those lines with us. It is, and I've said it, it's been an ongoing thing. It is laughable and it is insulting that the CEOs of these companies are calling what they are offering us generous while they're literally making a whole assembly plant's wages, and they're calling it performance-based. Ms. Vera said that it's very generous.
And I asked the question, maybe you have the answer. How many lug nuts have you seen her put on? How many windshields has she installed? Has she put a hood on a car? Does she know how to put a hood on a car?
I wouldn't think that she knew how to put safety glasses on at this point. Because I've never seen her on an assembly line. So I'm trying to figure out what performance, other than the Grinch that stole Christmas, are they performing?
She said that 93% of her wages, or her compensation, is because of merit. I'd like to know what the other 7% is for. But if that meritocracy idea is where we're going, shouldn't you guys get much higher wages because you're the folks who actually build the product?
We are. That's the thing. Everybody is making money except for the people that are doing the actual work.
Well, that's the American dream, isn't it?
Oh no, it's a nightmare at this point. There are people that come in, cuts, bruises. They don't get to spend time with their family. They're working around the clock to make ends meet. And you have people that all they have to do is delegate and sign paperwork and tell us that we're ungrateful. And that's their performance.
And
that's what entitles them to the money that they make.
So walk us through the average day, because I don't think most people know what it's like to work on an assembly line. We get to see videos where it's nice and clean, and you've got robots doing all this kind of stuff. What's it like? What's your average day look like?
And that is so glamorous. The stuff they show you on the TV, and on news clips and stuff, is like the most glamorous stuff in the world. I actually say, hey, I want that job, because it's not how it goes. An average day for an auto worker is you start your day with a couple curse words, a couple good stretches, and you go into a building and you go into a building and it's nothing like they think. All that, you come out clean, you go in, you come out, your clothes are torn, you have grease stains that you have to literally become a laundry chemist to get clean. You've eaten 3 cold meals throughout your night. You've been away from your family all night. A regular work week for me, and I'm a production team leader. So what I do, I'm responsible for a team. I'm responsible for their bathroom breaks. If anyone has to make a medical call, if anyone has to step away from the line for any reason, I fill in their job for them. I'm responsible for making sure that they have the proper personal protection equipment. I'm responsible for making sure that the line starts up on time, and I do repairs.
So you're like the jack of all trades. You're like the everyone.
The Jill of all trades, hon. And a regular day is for me, is 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I just visit home. My daughter and my dogs and my family, they're running my house right now. I'm just the visitor. I stop in from time to time and I just pay rent.
So this is the reason for the 32-hour work week. And look, I love the fact that someone's finally saying, now here's the thing. Do you think let's start there. Do you think that's do you think 32-hour work week is possible?
You know what? I think it's possible. It's kind of like, it's one of those things where you're like, no, this can't be. It's too good. It sounds too good to be true, because we're so conditioned to living in these assembly plants.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like the 32-hour work week, that's the least of what we're asking for. At this point, ending tiers is up there on it. The wages is up there on it. Pensions. I would love to have a pension when I retire. I would love to have better benefits when I retire. I would love to have the package that my dad had. I would love to have that. But I feel like I'm working double time to get half of what he's getting. And eggs are $8 right now. Everything has gone up except our wages.
And this is how we fight for better wages, hours, conditions. Last question I've got for you. I was looking at Tim Scott yesterday, and good on your union for filing a complaint against his comments. He said that, citing Ronald Reagan when he fired the Patco workers, he said that if you strike, you get fired. Any thoughts to the presidential hopeful Tim Scott?
Well, he doesn't have much hope at this point talking like that, because this country was built on the backs of unions. This company was built on the backs of middle class workers. It's really easy for someone that hates a union to say that we need to be fired. When again, I don't think he could last a day in an assembly plant. So maybe that's his resentment talking, that he doesn't have that grit in order to do what we do. Is if you can't beat him, join him. Apparently he can't beat us, but he wants to beat us down.
There you go. Tiffany, I appreciate you taking time for us. I hope you'll, good luck. One day longer, one day stronger. I wish you guys the best, and I'd love to have you come back and talk to us again down the road.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate Tiffany Simmons, UAW Local 900. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Hopefully I'll see Tiffany when we're in Michigan on Sunday. Again, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you've got questions, comments, something on your mind. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Taylor Swift has, I don't know why I continually find stories with Taylor Swift in them. I'm not a Swiftie, but good on her for taking on Ticketmaster. Really good on her. Good on her for signing a contract with the Writers Guild and getting them the things that they need so that she could move on her film. And this, evidently, an Instagram post drove a record-breaking amount of web traffic to vote.org. And evidently this week helped to register 35,000 new voters. Holy cow is right. Can she do it again today? Because look, there's a generation of folks who need to be encouraged. Young people, we need you to vote. And then not just register, but get out there and actually vote. And here in Pennsylvania, good on Governor Josh Shapiro, signed into law automatic voter registration. It's what I've said for the longest time. There's got to be a way that everybody is in, and the whole registration process to me is too cumbersome, and just there should be a way of every person having the ability to cast their ballot. I'm a big fan of same-day registration, big fan of instant runoff voting. There are things we should be doing to make voting easier, and democracy is participatory. Now, here's the thing. Dave McCormick is going to be running for Senate in Pennsylvania, I guess. He ran last time, lost to Dr. Oz, the New Jersey guy in the primary. So the Connecticut guy lost to the New Jersey guy to run for Senate in Pennsylvania. Turns out he's running again this time, but it'll be against Bob Casey instead of the open seat that eventually John Fetterman won. But the former hedge fund manager, he evidently still lives in Connecticut. And look, that's okay, I guess. Our rich people, they live in a lot of places. So, you can easily buy a house in Pennsylvania and just to skirt the rules there. But travel home on the weekends. What's the big deal? I think it kind of is a big deal, don't you? I remember when Rick Santorum ran against Harris Wofford, and accused him of not living in the state, and actually went to his house and showed, all kinds of things. And then you find out that he wins a seat and he does the exact same thing because he was Pennsylvania's senator who lived in Virginia, which I think where he probably still lives, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. If anyone knows, by all means, drop me an email. The Wall Street Journal, the newspaper of the investor class, Rupert Murdoch's rag. They have their editorial folks who asked the question about Donald Trump not debating. Is he worried he'd look his age at 77 next to younger candidates? And I'm going, no, I don't think that's it at all. I think he's like, why bother? None of the Republican candidates are close, nowhere close. I mean, it's not even a matter of, it's competitive. No, it's not even close. Second is way down the road. If I were him, I'd go, call me when someone's within 40 points. And, you're sticking up for Trump. No, I'm not. I'm just saying, this is an idiotic editorial. Now, is he old? He's 77 years old. Does he sound 77? Yeah, he's struggling to speak too. Sometimes he says things, and you don't see many TikTok people, and there's not a cottage industry of using all of the Trump nonsense on every video. I see Biden stuff all the time because there's money in it, I guess. But Trump's an old guy too. The reality is we're going to have two old guys running for president. One old guy has really good policies. One old guy is actually rebuilding our infrastructure. One old guy is actually helping workers organize and putting people in the positions to do better. One guy is actually doing what he said he was going to do. The other guy, first in history to attempt a coup. Still sticking to the big lie. Still sticking to that the election was rigged, even though half of his own party is saying, no, not rigged. You lost. Isn't it odd? Now, what I find interesting is every time Trump speaks, in Exhibit A, here it is again. And it's one of those things that, just the other day he was talking about how he didn't listen to his lawyers, which I found hysterical. Because my first thought was, did Trump just fall on the sword for his lawyers? Did he just let them off the hook? They could come back now and say, look, I gave him all this advice and he didn't follow it. He followed his own accord, and it's all on them. Which is why I think Lynn Wood, the former Trump lawyer, now evidently star witness for the defense down in Georgia, for the prosecution down in Georgia, could be quite troublesome. Yeah, I'm stumped sometimes when I hear Joe Biden's old. Yeah, so is the other guy. Age and experience used to be good things in this country. I don't know when it became bad. I love the fact that Biden's calm. He has had a major calming effect on this country, and that is a good thing. We needed to cool the temperature a bit, but a steady hand and smart policy looking to the past to say, you know what, we can recreate those really good things that our grandparents fought for. You listened to Tiffany there a second ago talking about her father, the job her father had and still has, and the lifestyle that it afforded. That's what that job used to mean. And now it's just like any other job. Struggling to make ends meet. Having to work a bunch of overtime just to get ahead. If we had those old Ford jobs back, there's that trickle-down effect. Or the rising tide effect, however you want to frame it. When their jobs get better, everybody's job gets better. Because we all start demanding. We all start wanting a bigger slice of the pie. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back.
I'm Rick Smith.
And this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1991. That was the day that members of the Culinary Workers Union Local 226 went out on strike against the Frontier Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. What they did not know was that the strike would last for more than 6 years, becoming one of the longest work actions in U.S. labor history. The Frontier was the second casino to open on the Vegas Strip in 1942. At the time of the strike, the Alardi family owned the historic casino. The Alardis were vehemently anti-union. They renovated the old facility and then reopened, refusing to sign a contract to pay its workers the same rate provided at most other Vegas casinos. Claiming that the Frontier was too small to match the wages of the larger outfits, management refused to budge from their position. In response, Local 226 members mobilized. The year before, Hattie Canty had been elected president of the local. She was a black mother of 10 children and a widow. She had worked as a hotel maid. Her leadership brought a new determination to the Culinary Workers Union. Local 226 set up 24-hour picket lines outside the Frontier. The strike was joined by Bartenders Local 165, Teamsters Local 995, the Operating Engineers Local 501, and the Carpenters Local 1780. The strike became an important moment in Vegas labor history, as other casino owners looked on watching the labor battle unfold. The unions stood strong. The picketers' demand that the owners should, quote, sell, shut down, or sign became the call. In the end, the Alardis decided to sell. The new ownership signed a union contract and rehired 280 striking workers. Triumphant union members cut a red ribbon at the hotel to mark their victory.
Oh, thank God for Ted Cruz. Once again, the far right-wing U.S. Senator is saving you and me from a political horror that doesn't exist. This is Ted's specialty, for he seems unable to deal with the real economic and social problems that workaday people actually have. Thus, he constantly tries to divert attention from his senatorial incompetence by staging embarrassing political stunts, such as his furious fulminations against Big Bird, Mickey Mouse, and other fictional characters. Unable to triumph over them, however, Cruz is now conjuring up entirely fictional conflicts to let him, a Harvard-educated elitist, pose as a hero of working-class commoners. Beer drinkers, for example. The cruiser recently swooped onto a Republican TV show, squawking like Chicken Little that Joe Biden intended to restrict us Americans to only 2 beers a week. Oh, the horror! What is it with liberals that want to control every damn aspect of your life, squealed the senator, who, by the way, does want government to control every woman's ball. This is Jim Hightower saying, embarrassingly, such other GOP officials as Iowa Senator Joni Ernst have joined Cruz's screwball crusade to stop Biden's non-existent beer bust. It's like they all went to clown school to learn to be senatorial. As for Ted, his nonstop series of nutty PR antics reveals that he is to a real senator what near beer is to beer, only not nearly as close.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I love the fact that, everyone's got Elon Musk on their mind. And again, I see him as an authoritarian figure. The guy who, if you don't do what I say, we'll put you in your place. Perfect example. When the UAW workers went on strike, Elon Musk revoked the paid blue check mark the UAW had on their X account. And only after people said, hey, wait a second, you can't do that, did he then reinstate it. But his first inclination was, we need to silence those people. Because understand, when you pay for that coveted blue check mark, when you pay Musk, you get much more exposure. They push you to the front of the line. Your algorithm goes crazy because they want your money. It is a pay-for-play thing. Now remember, he said it was all about free speech. He bought Twitter because of free speech, only now you got to pay for it. And now everyone's going to have to pay for it, according to some reports. And if that happens, we will be leaving Twitter. But here to share some thoughts on Elon and, well, the latest dust up at Tesla, I've asked our good friend Morris Pearl to come talk with us. Morris is the chairman of the Patriotic Millionaires, patrioticmillionaires.org, the website. Morris, thanks for taking time for us.
Good evening, Rick. Great to be in your show. Thank you.
So what do you make of this blue checkmark thing? To me, this is just another example of someone who has power, too much power, and someone who's going to abuse it. Absolutely.
I think Mr. Musk, he wants to be thought of as like a father figure. And everyone does what I tell them to do because I'm the daddy, and kind of like when you go to the park with your 3 and your 4-year-old, they kind of follow you around. And they don't even think about going somewhere else. I mean, that must be what he thinks, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
The benevolent dictator.
He wants to be the benevolent dictator. And personally, I have 2 kids, and they're both adults now, and 33 and 30. I never wanted to be the benevolent dictator. You know what I mean? I was too lazy to micromanage them. So, it's
not fair to them either. But the reason I bring him up is, there's a story that they're now suing the NLRB, and the decision that the NLRB made, I guess it was a year or so ago, to allow some of the workers to allow workers to wear shirts with a UAW logo on it. And look, that's part of what the law allows. You're allowed to have buttons and stickers and T-shirts and hats. You're allowed to wear those things. You're allowed to put stickers on your car. That's all been decided, and yet Elon's fighting this. Why?
I think it's just part of his desire to be paternalistic or something, or his desire to be a dictator. It's like the law is pretty clear. It was their case in the 1940s. It's like you can say that you can't wear a metal pin if you're running an x-ray machine or something like that because it's dangerous. But you have to, like wearing T-shirts, they said everyone has to wear black T-shirts. That's their rule. And the UAW gave them black T-shirts, just took out the word Tesla and put in the word UAW instead of the logo. It's like they've been going to court on this for years now. And even though it's in California, they decide to appeal it in Texas because that's where their headquarters is now. And it's like why are they trying to antagonize people? It's like, I just don't get it. It's like they don't want good relations with their own workers. They want the workers to see them as to fear them as overarching dictators. And I don't know. Elon Musk grew up in South Africa. Maybe that's how they do things there.
Maybe, but I look at Pennsylvania's workers' compensation law, and I say this all the time. It still refers to the employer-employee relationship as master and servant. And there are people who still have that on their mind, that the employer is the master and the workers are their servants. Because look, the NLRA, when originally written, understood that workers had no rights. The employer decided what hours they'll work, what days they'll work, what working conditions are, who they'll hire. They decide everything in the workplace. So when the NLRA was written, it was to ensure that workers got some bit of voice, some bit of rights, and the ability to collective bargain and to organize, to have some power in the workplace was what our law sought out to do. And that's always been a sore spot with the employer class because they want to be that benevolent dictator.
They do. And they have their business. And the same way you can't go to each and every part of the Tesla factory and apply for a job separately and see who will pay you more. Well, the Tesla owners can't go to each individual worker and try to make a different deal with them. They have to deal with the union. That's how it should be. And the same way that the capital can collectively bargain, labor should be able to collectively bargain too. But Mr. Musk doesn't want to treat people fairly. He wants to be in charge of everything. And
let me ask you this.
That's not the American way.
Let me ask you this, because, I spent a couple of days last week talking about this CEO, a guy named Tim Gurner. And I don't know if you know who he is or where this came from, but he was on a panel. He was, doing a presentation. And he said, look, he wants to see 40, 50% more unemployment. He wants to see pain in the economy. He wants to see workers, back in their place. He wants them to know, he said, because you know what, workers shouldn't be grateful to the employer and not think that the employer should be grateful to them. And I said, look, this is what the CEO class believes. They want obedient workers to be in their place and not demand too much, but just show up, make the profits, and go away silent. It's my view that that's pretty much all of the CEO class. Am I wrong?
I used to think you were wrong. I now am beginning to think that you're right. It's just sad. And that's not the way I would want to run a business. I want people to like to work with me. That's what I tell the workers who work in my organization at Patriotic Millionaires. We have, 12, 15 employees, and I want them to be happy there. But I was actually reading The Capital Order, how economists invented austerity, Clara Matte's book. And it's true. They actually want a kind of a relationship with workers, that workers are like an underclass and the capitalists are like the first class. And that's been part of capitalism for, all of the last century, if not before. And we've been trying to fight against that with labor unions and sort of change that. And it can be done, but they are fighting tooth and nail against it. And I just think that it's a losing battle, and they're not on the right side of history.
Yeah, well, they're on the right side of the balance sheet, though, because, I'm looking at, I know, the UAW members are on strike at 3 plants in Ohio, Michigan, in Michigan, Ohio, and Missouri. And we'll see what happens tomorrow, depending on what goes from there. But I was reading through some numbers, $250 billion over the last decade, the big three have made. But the one that jumped out at me, $66 billion in stock buybacks. That's telling me on their side of the ledger, they're cashing in.
Yeah, that is the owners of the company taking cash out of their company, billions of dollars worth. And yeah, if you own the company, you're allowed to do that. But you also should be willing to pay your workers enough that they can make a good living. And if the high paid people are getting raises, well, everyone should be getting raises, because you don't want to have a country with a few rich people, not the poor people. That doesn't work if you're trying to sell cars to people. Even Henry Ford understood that. It's just a sad thing. And we have to change it. They're even arguing about how much money, whether they make more money at Tesla or not. And the people at Tesla might make more money because they can get stock options if their stock goes up, or they'll make less money if their stock doesn't go up because their actual pay from their jobs is less than UAW rates. But we just have to live in a country where people can be treated fairly.
Yeah.
And we have to change the attitudes of these managers who just insist that they be in charge of everything. And I think we are. I really think the automakers are going to come to an agreement with these guys. They're not that far apart. The UAW wants 40%, but over the course of 4 or 5 years, the automakers are offering 20% plus a cost of living adjustment, which I think is going to be pretty close, but they're talking kind of different languages. So I have a feeling that they're going to end this strike reasonably soon.
Well, that's the hope.
I'm optimistic.
Because nobody wants to be out on that picket line. Nobody wants to have to worry that they're not going to be able to pay their bills. Look, I've been on strike before. I know what it's like to miss a paycheck when you're fighting for something. And look, I get it. So the hope is that it is short. But my problem is, and this is a societal thing for me, Morris. And you're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Morris Pearl. He's the chairman of the Patriotic Millionaires, patrioticmillionaires.org, the website, if you want to take a look at the work that they do there, and they do incredible stuff. Because this goes back to, the wheelhouse that you're in. I believe our tax code has done a lot of damage to the employer-employee relationship, because you go back to 1960, or the 1960s when the GM CEO was making 20 times what the average worker was making. You now got this Mary Barra who's making $29 million a year, which is 360 times more than the average worker there. And you go, something is skewed. What caused that to happen? And I argue it's the fact that we don't have a high top marginal tax rate.
Yeah, because and a large part of her money is coming from her stock-based compensation, as they call it, stock options, and she pays even a lower tax rate on that. And if we had higher tax rates, people would not be looking to earn these tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollar paychecks. They'd be happier owning part of their company, and they'd be happier spreading the wealth more if we had, more progressive tax structures like we did when maybe America was great back in the 50s and 60s, at least for the white males.
Because I've been talking to auto workers this last week, and we're going to go to Toledo on Saturday and up into Michigan on Sunday to walk the picket lines and talk to people there. And the story that I keep hearing is, this was a good, solid, upper middle class, working class job, 40 years ago, and now it's almost a poverty wage job, and it's indicative of most industries for working people. Now finance folks have done really well, and some of the other stuff, but for people who work for a living, or their backs are aching at the end of the day, or as Ed Schultz used to say, the people who shower at the end of the day, things have gotten tough, which is why I think you see this anger and this frustration, which isn't good for anyone.
I think the anger and the thinking of the unfairness is just as important as the money. I think that even people who are being paid a reasonable hourly wage are just angry still if they're being treated like children and being told what to wear and what to do and how to do this and how to do that and being looked down upon. And I think we have to respect the people we work with. They're not below us. They're not lower class of people or something. They're just people who happen to work with their hands in a factory floor instead of, sitting around pressing buttons on their keyboards in an office. But that doesn't mean they're lesser quality people or something. In some cases, they're better quality people. I couldn't do what they do.
Well, it's, as I always say, every job has dignity. Every job should be respected. And part of that respect is making sure that you can keep a roof over your head and food on the table. Most working people I know, they don't want to make a killing. They know they're never going to be millionaires, but they don't want their kids to go hungry. And I look today, we're talking about Tesla and T-shirts. You've got Joe Manchin running around, seeking a proposal to reinstate suits in the Senate. Yet he's a guy who's responsible for a 60% rise in childhood poverty in this country because they refuse to extend the child tax credit. We're fighting over clothing when real issues are affecting real people.
You look at the conservative media, Fox News and the like, that is front page news everywhere. Senators not wearing suits and ties anymore. That is the most major story for the other side in right-wing America is, Schumer and the Democrats destroying the country by getting rid of the dress code in the Capitol building. Like, really? That's the most important thing? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
No, but it's that thing that it's the shiny thing, Morris, and you know this as well as anyone. It's the shiny thing to keep us outraged and upset and give us something to be mad at, while the things that we really should be mad at go unnoticed.
Yeah, that's been true since, the Roman empires had, lions eating people in the Colosseum, and people have been distracted by, wars and foreign countries, centuries later. It's just sad that that's what our leaders do for millennia, is sort of give people something to be mad about, so they forget about the fact that they're being mistreated and, working on us for austerity wages. And it's just, we have to change that. And that's what the UAW and Sean Fain is trying to do, is to stand up for this finally. And I was in the Sidney Hillman room today having a meeting. He's the one who started Amalgamated Clothing Workers. Yep. And he started that because they were going on strike over 100 years ago, and the union leadership caved and signed with the employers and even sent people, but the workers there refused to go back to work. And it took years, and it took people fighting against not only their employers, but their own union leadership. They finally started a new union and got rid of the United something or others and started the Amalgamated Clothing Workers. And, then they started the CIO, which later merged with the AFL. And it's, people leading, and in the same way, it reminded me of Sean Fain becoming the leader of the UAW, because people were getting fed up with the previous leadership that was talking about givebacks and getting too close to management. And I think it's the same thing that we had 100 years ago.
No, I'm thrilled with him, and I think he's doing a great job. Because I think he's doing a good job in that he's talking about the issues not in a right-left, red hat, blue hat, but in the up-down frame that I think is important. That, when Trump said he was going to go to Detroit and meet with auto workers there, he's like, look, he's one of the people that we're taking on. We're going after the billionaire class and people like him, and I thought it was the right frame.
Yeah. And it's not like everyone in the red hats or blue hats are good or bad. We have problems with people on both sides of the aisle sometimes. And I think we need people to remember to stand up for the people who are doing the work and not talk about, oh, we must keep them tied to their employers. Oh, we must make them subservient to their masters. And that's the wrong framing. And we have to change that.
Yep.
I think he's trying.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled with where we're heading. But Morris, I appreciate the time as always. Great stuff, my friend.
Thank you, Rick. Great to talk to you.
Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got a question, comment, something on your mind? That's how you get to me. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day that labor activist Mother Jones led a march of miners' children through the streets of Charleston, West Virginia. Her aim was to illustrate the effects of poverty. In the speech she gave that day, Mother Jones declared, "Tyranny, robbery, and oppression of the people must go. The children must be educated." Her march took place during the 1912 to 1913 Paint Creek, Cabin Creek coal miners' strike in that state. During the strike, gunfire was exchanged between members of the United Mine Workers and the mine owners' hired private army. The governor declared martial law on 3 separate occasions. Mother Jones was arrested in February of 1913. She was accused of conspiring to commit murder and brought before a military court. She refused to recognize the legitimacy of her court-martial. Mother Jones was sentenced to 20 years in the state penitentiary. While she was under house arrest for 85 days, Mother Jones contracted a dangerous case of pneumonia. She was 76 years old. Her support of the miners and subsequent trial helped build the reputation of Mother Jones as a tough union activist and the miners' angel. It also helped lead the U.S. Senate to launch an investigation into conditions in the West Virginia coal mines. When Henry D. Hatfield was elected governor of West Virginia, he was determined to end the labor crisis. He released those who had been convicted under the military court. On May 8th, Mother Jones was set free. Mother Jones, the grandmother of all agitators, continued her fight for working people. Mother Jones's trial helped to spotlight the low wages coal miners earned, the long hours they worked, and the dangerous working conditions under which they toiled. One of her most remembered quotes is, "Pray for the dead, but fight like hell for the living." It really is quite remarkable when you stop and think about it that Elon Musk would spend that kind of energy to ensure that their workers don't have a UAW logo on their shirt. I mean, you know, when you think about it, there's a guy who's extraordinarily punitive. And look, you know, this is what happens when you get people who have the kind of obscene wealth and power that comes with wealth. This is what they do. So was it surprising that Tim Gurney was saying, you know, we need to get those people back in place? We need to get them, you know, back to being grateful to us? Anyone surprised by that? Anyone surprised that they want a recession? Why do you think the Republican Party's been begging for recession for so long? It's because it's what their owners are telling them. Get those people back into the workforce. Get them back. Cut off those social programs. Make people desperate again. And understand, you know, when they push for these work requirements, it's about pushing more people into the workforce, so you dilute the labor pool. And then lower wages. We saw this back when Clinton was president. If you remember the heated economy under Clinton, the McDonald's down the street from me, now minimum wage was what, $5.15 an hour? The McDonald's down the street from my house when I lived in Allentown was $10 an hour. That's what they were making back then, and that was good money. You know, working at a McDonald's for $10 an hour in the mid 90s was not bad. They passed welfare reform. Immediately that $10 an hour McDonald's job goes back down to just above minimum wage, like $5.50 or something like that. Because what you did is you pushed a whole bunch of people back into the workforce. You know, you increased the surplus labor, and what happened is it drove wages down. But Rick, you don't want people just sitting around. No, I don't. But when you force people into, especially the low-wage jobs, the bottom falls out. And that's what the employer class wants. You know, you hear people complaining about bars and restaurants. You know, the David Brooks thing that I talked about earlier, $78 for a hamburger and a drink at the airport in Newark is obscene. Never mind the fact that 80% of it was alcohol and him, you know, probably drinking himself blind drunk. But what you're supposed to get from that is, well, those greedy workers at the airport, you know, they're making too much money. That's the reason it's so expensive, because of labor costs. When that's furthest from the truth. But now that they have to pay a reasonable wage to someone working in a restaurant, now you're hearing them complain. What's interesting to me is why we haven't heard the business class say that we want immigration reform, that we want to bring in more immigrants to get them to do the low wage work that most Americans aren't doing for you know what the minimum wage is for tipped workers in Pennsylvania? I think it's like $2.93. You know, how many people are going to take that job? We got lots to accomplish. And it comes back down to politics. As long as we can get past the red hat, blue hat, as long as we can get past suits are the most important issue of the day. I mean, I'm still shaking my head that this is even an issue. But welcome to the American political system. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program? Grab the podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, you'll find ours. And by the way, if you like our working class hero shirts, ricksmithshow.com.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.